Like the fire, feel the beat. G'day Gridiron can't be beat. Lift your knee and bring the heat. Brad's the MVP elite. From the outback through the field, we got tackles hard to steal. Catch the passes, make it real. Gridiron warriors never kneel. G'day Gridiron, down under and beyond. G'day Gridiron, yeah, the podcast come on strong.
G'day Aussie Gridiron fans, and welcome to a special episode of G'day Gridiron. It's been a few weeks since we've had a very specific G'day Gridiron episode. Of course, we've been in the middle of the AGN playoff series with the rest of the boys from the Aussie Gridiron Network and covering all of the playoffs. But today, we're in that bit of a limbo week, or the limbo fortnight before we have the Super Bowl. We've just passed championship weekend, which was amazing. So all of the coaching news has come out of the league since, I guess, right before the championship game, right through till now, all over the weekend and through this week. So Brad and I thought we would put together a bit of a special podcast around all of the new coaching hires and what they mean for some teams and how some teams might fare, all that sort of stuff. We'll talk about the new head coaches, some of their OCs, DCs, special teams coordinators that they've hired as well, straight up, a GM in amongst all that lot or two. And we'll run through all the other sort of smaller coaching hires, teams that have lost OCs, DCs, and now promoted people, all that sort of stuff. So stick with us for that for this evening. We'll go through, do all of that. As I said, Brad is here with me. How you going, mate?
I am doing good. After a fantastic Monday, I was my unofficial family title was captain of the couch potatoes.
Yeah.
So I was loving watching football. Even though I've got the package and you can watch football anytime you want, I still ended up getting up at 5:00 and watching the games. So I even watched all the pregame crap. It was crazy.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't end up sort of really watching anything live. I had to do the I'll watch it whenever I can mode. Yeah, that was just the way that worked out for me.
Yeah,
is what it is, and I got to watch a little bit more stuff. So yeah, it was all pretty good. But the games are great. We'll talk a lot more about the games and do some recap stuff from championship weekend with the boys. On another episode this weekend, when we do AGN playoff series, we'll recap games, we'll recap our tipping comp, best bets, just to see how we did from the weekend. There were some pretty good wins from the weekend in best bets, I can tell you that right now.
Nice.
And the fantasy show, so how we've fared in the fantasy show. We're going to do all that in one show this week. And I have heard that Manjot is bringing back the Pastry Performer Awards for 2024 once again. He did this the last couple of years on a podcast. He's doing it especially for YouTube this year. So Manjot's going to hit it out of the park, no doubt. That'll be a great watch and a great listen
Beautiful.
to. You'll be able to hear that on this podcast feed as well. But obviously, head to YouTube because Manjot will no doubt put together something special there for YouTube. But we're not here to talk about any of that. As I said, we are here to talk coaching, Brad.
I love it. It's the backbone of the league, the unsung heroes. Although coaching have seemed to develop their personalities, have become kind of front and center stage lately. So it used to be kind of the coaches were deflected all the praise and the glory and all that. But as football has grown, so have the egos of the coaches, no doubt. Thank you, Urban Meyer.
Yes, yeah. Well, that definitely started with Urban Meyer, didn't it? The ego side of the coaching tree. I guess it could be its own tree these days because there are quite a few egos out there. You look in the college system, I think there's some pretty big egos in the college system in coaching.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think more and more it's just evolved or devolved, depending on how you look at it, into these guys have to have super egos to survive or to be successful. It's unfortunate, but it's such a cutthroat industry, and they're not all like that, but a lot of them are just it's a hard place to be.
It's like it's no longer good enough just to be like a really good coach and really good with the numbers and all of everything you're supposed to do and schemes, all that sort of stuff. You have to have an actual personality and be really good behind the camera and talking to media. If you're not that, you get like it's straight up people just making fun of you straight away.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you're behind. And you think about I'm very old school coaches in terms of I grew up knowing Tom Landry as the Cowboys coach. There's no way Tom Landry gets hired in today's day and age. The guy was a brilliant progressive for his time, X's and O's, and he knew how to do people. But in terms of media savvy, that wasn't his thing. He didn't care about image or any of that kind of stuff. He was super buttoned up, and it's definitely just like what you said. It's Instagram, it's that kind of culture and mentality.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It 100% is. So we've already seen, I don't know whether you saw it, Brad, and we might touch on it a little bit later, Liam Cohen's interview, like straight away, he's just been made fun of because of his personality. The guy is brilliant and brilliant at what he does. But yeah, he got made fun of. We'll talk about a bit more about Liam Cohen a bit later. We'll start with the hottest coaching commodity in this year's coaching cycle, and that is, of course, Ben Johnson, who, like 24 hours or so after the Lions were out of the playoffs, was officially announced the next head coach of the Chicago Bears. It seems to be a very poorly kept secret, but he did have a couple of other coaching interviews with some teams, and he was, as I said, the hottest commodity out there on the block right now. He was the big boy to get hold of, and he helped revive Jared Goff's career, made him a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback again. Goff was amongst the league's top passers in both 2023 and 2024. And, of course, now Ben Johnson will look to do the same with Caleb Williams, who will be a second-year QB next year when he officially plays his first games coaches his first games as a Chicago Bear. And we'll be able to see what Ben Johnson might be able to do with a much younger person. I've got a little bit of audio here from Ben Johnson from his press conference, Brad.
Your predecessors came in a very similar situation that you have. Quarterback already in place, having to come in kind of midway through, this rebuild being done. What is it that you can bring to the table that will make this situation end in a different manner than what we've seen in previous situations?
Listen, I can't speak to the previous coaches that were here. All I can tell you is this. Every step along the way, I already alluded to it, I found a way to excel in each job. So I'm deeply committed to finding a way to make this work. My core values really rest on work ethic, selflessness, and poise. And I expect that to be embodied within this team.
Well, there we go, Brad. Three great core ethics, if you ask anybody.
Oh, absolutely. I love it. I mean, he's saying all the right things. And I think, does he come across as the most dynamic guy? No, he looks more like a substitute teacher than anything else. Yeah. And that's no knock on substitute teachers. I did that for a little bit, so no knock there. But he just comes across as kind of, clean cut, buttoned up. But I love those things. And he's right in the sense that he's had success at every step of where he's done. And what more can you measure a guy by? So, I mean, that is ultimately what needs to be the litmus test is what's the product you're putting out onto the field. And he's putting out a great product, let me tell you.
Yeah, he certainly is. Everything about his product in Detroit was been amazing. Like he was obviously responsible for a lot of the trick plays and just different things week to week, that he was so deep into the tape on every one of his opponents week to week that he knew what sort of plays or what ways he could design certain things to get around what they do best. And even to the point where some teams, he was 3 to 4 weeks ahead in the planning, so they would end up running plays weeks before to see what they looked like, to know whether they would get past, let's say, like a Vikings defense in this sort of certain situation.
Jeez.
You know, and it's just nuts. The brain to be able to do that, and to also be able to coach guys to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. And then to communicate that vision of this is why we're doing it, type of thing. He's not just sitting up in an ivory tower drawing up X's and O's. He's got to communicate these to grown men, and they, in order to get them to buy in, they need to understand the why. So obviously he's an excellent communicator, excellent forward planner, and I think what you're getting with him is a lot of creativity and a lot of aggressiveness. He's gonna. I think there's a reason him and Dan Campbell gelled, and you're gonna see that. What concerns me about this hire, if anything, is just because now he's head coach. You can't do all those things because he's going to have so much more on his plate. So what are you going to give up? Is he going to delegate things? Because the one knock that I've heard a little bit, and it's not really a knock, but it's just a truth, is that there is a tendency by him to want to micromanage and have his feet or his fingers in everything. And you can't do that as a head coach. It doesn't work. There's not enough hours in a day to do it. So that's my one thing that I'd be curious to know is, like, what's his hiring going to be, and how's he going to delegate? Is he going to be? He's obviously going to still run the offense, but it's all the player personnel. Is he going to get an ex-NFL head coach to kind of balance him out and take some of that other stuff away from him? So I think it's a great hire, and I think it's fantastic for Caleb. So much of what Johnson does is rhythm and play action, and I think I think Caleb Williams is going to really excel under that. But it's not going to be easy, that's for sure.
No, and I guess you're definitely right, Brad. In life, just in general, people in businesses that are so detail orientated are usually the people that really like to micromanage everything around them, because they are so detail focused, like laser detail focused.
Yes.
Yep. You mentioned it a little bit there. The Bears reportedly are hiring former Saints head coach Dennis Allen as defensive coordinator. Great hire to pair alongside a first-time head coach in Ben Johnson, I would think. Dennis Allen knows the ins and outs. He's been around for a long time. He knows how things can go badly as well if you don't keep up with the way the league needs to work and the way you need to work through being a head coach. So I think that's a great thing to pair an older head with a younger head in this situation. And the other side of the ball, apparently Broncos tight end coach Declan Doyle has been rumoured to be, or apparently it's out there that it is going to happen, Chicago's new offensive coordinator under Ben Johnson. You would imagine Ben Johnson's still probably going to call plays. A lot of these offensive head coaches do. But training-wise and, I guess, advice and all the rest of it, that, so Declan will probably be coming up that way.
Yeah, it'll be. I think the Dennis Allen hire is a really good one. He got a lot maligned with the Saints, but before taking over as the head coach there, he was very well respected around the league. So I'm not surprised, and he does typically run a really good defense. So I think that could be a really good pairing. So they'll be fun.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the next team. Well, not the next one in line, but just the next one we're going to have a chat about. The Jacksonville Jaguars finally locked down a new head coach for a star-studded lineup, and it is Liam Cohen, the former Bucks offensive coordinator. He had agreed to re-up with Tampa after interviewing with the Jags for the job. Decided to pull out of consideration for the Jags opening. And then Cohen was soon sort of back in the mix once some other things went down with GM Trent Baalke, who Shad Khan decided to finally move on from around 2 weeks too late, but definitely moved on from him. And, it ended up being this whole debacle around Liam Cohen. I've got a bit of a timeline, Brad. So let me see if I can just bring it up without everything going crazy on me. So you go right back to January 12th, and Liam Cohen did a Zoom interview with the Jags.
Okay.
And then on January 15, there was an in-person interview, I believe it was, on the 15th.
Okay.
Yeah, a couple of days later, it was an in-person one. So there's all that. On the 20th, on the 20th he had the in-person interview. Then on the 22nd, he told them that he was going to pull out of the running for that. And then later in the day, 22nd, almost like a few hours later, Shad Khan announces that Trent Baalke is officially out as GM. The morning of the 23rd of January in the States, the Bucks were trying to get hold of Liam Cohen because he hadn't yet signed his new agreement, which he had agreed to with the Bucks to make him the league's highest paid coordinator or coach in the league. So they were trying to get hold of him 23rd, couldn't get hold of him. Eventually around midday, he sends a message reportedly sends a message to the Bucks to tell them that he was at a dental appointment with his kids and he'd get back to them later. That never happened. Later on in the day, on the 23rd, because apparently the Jags sent a private jet and everything for him, he went out there, had another interview with them, and officially signed on as the Jags head coach. So it's been a whole back and forth debacle around Liam Cohen and the Jags, and just the way everything's gone down. And yeah, as I alluded to at the top, or I talked about a little bit at the top, there's some guys around that, without this sort of personality, that instantly get made fun of, and this whole situation just hasn't made that situation any better.
Yeah. It's unfortunate because I think this is so we got seven openings. I think this could be arguably the second best, potentially the best hire of all the coaches. Personally,
some people were saying this was the best job if it wasn't for Trent Baalke. If Trent Baalke hadn't been there at the start, it was the best opportunity in the league.
Yeah.
So, but Liam Cohen, I agree with you, Brad, could be probably the best actual hire.
Well, you think about, again, you dive into what he's done, and the fact that he was 4 seasons under McVay, and everybody listens to the show knows I'm a huge McVay honk. But he was with them, and then he goes to Tampa Bay, and he turns them from one of the worst rushing offenses to like the top 3 or 4 rushing offenses. And he didn't have this massive change. It was 3 of the same offensive linemen. And then he gets a rookie running back who, granted, Bucky Irvin, he did really good. I think he exceeded expectations. But he also had to deal with the injuries to Mike Evans and Godwin and all that. So the fact that he turned around that running game, which is kind of McVay's specialty, I think he's a perfect a for the Jaguars. Like what you're saying, it's just, this is a really dynamic offense. I think I'm still a Trevor Lawrence believer. I know a lot of people aren't, but I think the guy's just been screwed over so many times, and I think this is kind of the make or break for Lawrence. But I think Cohen's the guy to do it, and he'll get that running game going, which will then free up the offensive game for Trevor. So I think it's a great hire.
Yeah, definitely. I do too. I think he will be a great hire. It's just this whole personality thing and the I don't know, the cringe worthiness of it. Brad, I don't know how much you've seen in the last couple of days. This is this is only one moment, like an 8-second clip out of his press conference where he was saying some good things, but he did seem very awkward in every single interaction with people. Looks very out of place in a suit is the other thing. I don't know why they put all these guys into suits straight away.
I know.
Honestly, if you're part of a team, if you're that person that's part of the media, the media team, and you're heading up the media team for one of these franchises, and you put your guy in a suit and he doesn't look right in a suit, let
Get
the
him
man wear a polo, for God's
Absolutely.
sake. Just
I don't care. Yeah, exactly. I don't care if he does a Bill Belichick and goes, sleeveless hoodie.
yeah, let them wear what they feel comfortable and look
Yep.
good in, because
Yep.
it's just looks, and you should know that. If you
Yeah.
are like the media manager for one of these teams or the marketing managers for one of these teams, you should know this already. It's basics. Anyway, is Liam Cohen being awkward and not looking good in a suit, Brad? Just saying one thing and one thing only.
Duval.
Come on.
Duval.
Oh my gosh. I've never seen that.
So
Yeah, you're right. He did look awkward. Oh man, it's funny. If for the listener, go look up that clip. Go look at it's just the way he also kind of tilts his head and he just he just looks like
Brad,
year eight.
the amount of times in next season when we are going to use that audio drop cannot be counted. I mean, it's going right in there around Mr. Unlimited and Baker's being dangerous. Like, it is just it's just there. So
absolutely. You look at a picture of him coaching on the sidelines. There's a couple pictures of him with Tampa Bay. And he's wearing sunglasses. I swear that guy's Arthur Smith. It's unreal how much he looks like Arthur Smith. It blew me away. So anyway, this is an aside. All that said, Jacksonville, props for getting rid of Bulky. Props for hiring this guy. And I think it's great for Trevor Lawrence. It's great for the team in general. So I really hope he succeeds.
yeah, same. I do too. All right, moving on for the carousel. Las Vegas Raiders reached an agreement with former Seattle Seahawks coach, Super Bowl winning coach as well, Coach Pete Carroll, to become the team's next head coach, of course. He will have a 3-year deal with a 4th-year team option. What a deal here to go from Antonio Pierce, who, as Maddie had said many times on our podcast, is you don't marry the stripper. We all know that. Yet in Vegas, sometimes they marry the stripper. But here we are. We're going to follow it up with like one of the most successful coaches in the league, and an old guy who's been out for a couple of years, but he might be 73, but this man acts like he's 52, Brad.
Isn't that the truth? Oh man, and your analogy there is spot on in the sense of he is the exact opposite to what the Raiders have been doing. You know, they've had 4 head coaches since 2021, and what do they need? What's the one thing they need? Stability. And guess what Pete Carroll's going to bring? Stability. So it's unreal. This guy, you know, he's just going to be Mr. Positivity, and what he's going to do. I don't mind it, to be honest with you, simply because of what he brings. And in terms of you have to understand the situation for the Raiders. And I think it's more important organizationally that they get a solid footing, get momentum. This is not a long-term hire. Even if he's there for 2-3 years, he'll give him some stability, and then they can move on to the sexy coordinator and that type of thing. I think this is actually, surprisingly for the Raiders, a good hire.
Oh, yeah, so do I. And, of course, like, you look at the Raiders, what's the strength of the Raiders right now? Because we know they're a shit show. But you look at the Raiders team, where's their strength, Brad? It's
It's not quarterback.
It's not quarterback. It's not anywhere on the offense. It's the defensive side of the ball. They have a really good, strong defense. They need some direction, but on paper they are really good. They're really strong. And what is a Pete Carroll as a head coach team known for at the Seahawks? Legion of Boom.
Yep.
So here we are, Pete Carroll coming back to like just that groove where if he finds the right DC to be there and be under him and go and build this thing properly with the pieces that they already have in place, like they could be a real force in the league. Like even despite the fact that they might still be a bit hairy for a year or two on offense.
Yeah. Pete's a culture builder. I'm partial to Pete because again, I had the chance to meet him at a coaching clinic in the States, and I was really impressed with him in the sense of the way he treated me, the way he treated some of these guys who we were nothing. I was nobody, an absolute zero. But he treated me, and he treated some of these other guys like hey, up here. And when he could have completely blown us off, a la Chip Kelly, dick. Anyway. so
don't go there. You want to get us in trouble, Brad?
No.
Let's. Pete Carroll, obviously. So the Raiders, they interviewed a few guys there. They interviewed Ben Johnson, Robert Saleh, Broncos DC, Vance Joseph as well. This announcement came basically after the Bears announced Ben Johnson. So everybody wanted Ben Johnson first. Once Ben Johnson was off the table, Raiders moved pretty swiftly to get Pete Carroll signed and across the line. This is so much. Tom Brady has been all over this and fingerprints everywhere in this GM and coaching search, and it has been said by management already that Tom was leading this search. This is such a great and an iconic sort of Tom Brady-esque hire where you grab this guy who, like you said, Brad, brings positivity, brings stability, brings like a level-headedness to an organization that has been spiraling out of control for the last 20 years, basically since our past, essentially. It's been the franchise has been a basket case since then, hasn't it?
Yeah. It really has. And so Brady is obviously instrumental in bringing Pete in, but it's also the GM. And that is a huge get, I think. And Brady, so for those of John Spytek was the former, was he the GM for Tampa Bay or the assistant?
He was the assistant GM for the Bucks when Brady played there.
Yeah, exactly. And so they have that connection. And so obviously he'd done enough, and he played with Brady.
Yeah, so they were both of them. They were teammates in Michigan in '99, where Spytek was a walk-on linebacker, and obviously Brady played there as QB. Yeah, so they sort of reunited when Brady signed with the Bucks, and Spytek was in his 5th season as the Bucks director of player personnel. Obviously, he then moved up to assistant GM the last couple of years. And then, so he replaces Tom Telesco, who was fired after one season on his way out. After, of course, the Raiders went 4-13. You don't really survive when you go 4-13 as a GM, and you miss on so many things, draft-wise and free agency as well. And, so such a great move. John Spytek, great name to start with.
Yes.
Bingo, bango.
Yes.
But it's such a Brady move, and to have that Brady thing go, this guy can achieve this as a GM, and then go, let's pair him with this guy who will be just an absolute force of stability and positivity for moving this franchise forward. And considering Brady is only a minority owner in this team, to have that much say and sway in this hire, it's just it's remarkable.
Yeah. It is, considering like you say, he owns only 10%, and of course, Davis has to sign off on it. He's the majority owner, but that Tom has got his fingerprints all over this, like what you've said, and I think it's a great hire. It's interesting seeing how much of these coach GMs are being paired together in this hiring cycle. That's becoming more and more of a thing. And actually looked at some of that and did a little bit of research around it. And they're saying a lot of it has to do with they're coming from the same agents.
Yep.
And so they have these same agents. So there's a lot of networking and they have these connections. So coaches are saying, I want this GM, and GMs are saying, I want this coach, because they have all these connections. So it's, if you get a chance, look into that. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I heard a lot during the week actually, which was it basically revolved around, and really quickly it revolved sort of around if the coach and the GM are aligned on their thought process of where the franchise should be and where it should go, where it is now, where it should go, where it should be, etc. All those things. If they're aligned on that, then the franchise will succeed. Because you look at the big franchises that are succeeding, like let's go with the Chiefs and the Eagles. They're the top two in the league right now. You got head coach and GMs pairings that are aligned on exactly what they feel and where it should go. They don't necessarily agree all the time, because you don't need to agree.
Right.
But just like a good marriage, you need to have that same alignment, that same thought processes. This is where we need to get to, and this is the way we need to work it. Along the way, you might have those few disagreements on how to achieve certain things, but overall, people bend and sway, and you get to where you're going to go to.
Yeah, exactly. And as long as the coach remembers to say, "I'm sorry, yes, dear, I'll do the dishes," then they'll have a great marriage.
Exactly. Are you saying that we're all coaches and our wives are the GMs?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Just making sure that's abundantly clear to everybody out there, Brad. All right, speaking of Tom Brady and former teams, the New England Patriots. We've talked already in this last couple of weeks about Mike Vrabel being hired as the head coach, returning to the New England Patriots, the same franchise where he won 3 Super Bowls as a player. Vrabel's been hired as the head coach, replacing Gerard Mayo, who was out after one season. They did also interview Ben Johnson and Brian Leftwich, Pep Hamilton for the job, but I think every man and his dog knew that Mike Vrabel was going to be that guy, and that's where we were going to. The big news during the week was the coordinators. Josh McDaniels is returning to New England, but in a role that he's already held on multiple occasions, and that is, of course, offensive coordinator. So this marks the 3rd time that McDaniels will serve as the Pats' offensive play caller, enjoying 2 previously successful stints. He helped, of course, Tom Brady set multiple passing records en route to the Patriots' perfect regular season in 2007. He left to become the Broncos' head coach in 2009, then rejoined the Pats as their OC again in 2012. He helped New England win 3 Super Bowls in his second stint, but it was his work with Mac Jones in 2021 that led the Raiders to hire him as their head coach. We know how that all went down. Now he's back with Drake May in his second season, which sets up pretty well another young, sort of basically rookie QB under Josh McDaniels, mate.
Yeah. It's I love this hire. I know I keep saying that, but I do. I think Vrabel is such a good hire. His mindset, it kind of mirrors the city in terms of this kind of tough and not afraid to get their nose dirty. He coaches like how he played. He's not afraid. He's very detail orientated, apparently, like incredibly detail orientated. And Tennessee, when he was with Tennessee, they did really well in 1-score games. And that comes down to attention to detail, especially at that level, because you're dealing with the same caliber guys on both sides, just freak athletes, and it's all those little things. And by all accounts, it sounds like the front office in New England was a lot of the problem. And so Vrabel's the type of guy, though, that's not afraid to ruffle feathers. Obviously, that's kind of why he was booted out of Tennessee. How'd that work out for you, Tennessee? And, So I think it's a great hire. It's going to be a little bit of a culture change, and it'll be interesting to see. McDaniels is McDaniels, in terms of what you're going to get with the guy. He's obviously a better OC than a head coach.
Yep.
So let him do his thing, and let McDaniels cook.
I can see that Josh McDaniels is going to be another one of those coaches in the league who finally figures out that the head coaching gig isn't for everybody, and that just being that coordinator and just still getting that money and just achieving year after year after year is the better route to success and happiness in the NFL.
Absolutely. Hello, Spagnolia.
Spags doesn't want head coaching jobs. He said, no way. DC all the way for me, thanks.
Absolutely.
And he still gets paid bloody well, gets looked after bloody well, has many Super Bowl rings to prove it now. So there you go. Speaking of DC, Terrell Williams will reunite with Mike Vrabel on the Patriots coaching staff. He has served as the Lions defensive line coach and run game coordinator the last couple of years. He'd also previously coached under Vrabel, where he was the Titans defensive line coach, and obviously second to Mike Vrabel. So obviously Vrabes has said, I want this guy under me once again to look after the defensive side of the ball, and Terrell Williams signs on as the defensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. Man, Brad, great hire. Number one, Terrell Williams. But number two, that Lions coaching staff has just been picked apart.
Oh, it's a feeding time for the buzzards. It's crazy how bad, and obviously Campbell knew it was coming. That's, I think, part of the reason why you saw him get so emotional after the loss last week in the divisional round, because he just knew they're never going to capture that again. And so he's got a plan for it. But you're right; it's gonna be. It's leaving the Lions with so many question marks, and you just hope for continued success for these guys like Terrell and like Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn and all these guys, because they deserve it. They've earned their stripes, and it's time for them to get this opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of the Lions, the Jets are bringing back Aaron Glenn as head coach. He returns to the Jets. He was a first-round draft pick with the Jets in 1994. Played 8 of his 15 NFL seasons there before transitioning to coaching. He served as a scout for 2 seasons with New York, then moved on to coaching since with the Browns, Saints, and of course the Lions. Glenn had been the DC in Detroit since 2021, and then coming off those back-to-back NFC North titles, he's gotten this opportunity with the New York Jets. They've also hired assistant general manager from the Broncos, Darren Mogay, as their new GM. That one came out a bit on the quiet in amongst the rest of this coaching cycle. But Aaron Glenn, great hire for the New York Jets, and hopefully he has a bit more success with that team and with that franchise than Robert Saleh did.
Okay. This is probably my least favorite hire, to be honest with you, or one of them. There's another one we'll get to later. But
I think everyone can guess what that is, Brad.
Yeah. But to me, what I don't get is that old adage, if you continue to do the same thing and expect different results, you're the idiot type thing. So
yep,
the Jets have hired these defensive gurus just consistently over and over and over, except for Adam Gase, who was supposed to be this offensive whiz. How'd that work out? They've always been employing defensive-minded coaches. So and that's what Salah was. Just going back to the very last one. Again, that didn't work out. So what's different about Glenn? And I don't know. I don't see it. He's a great leader, yes, but you need that offense is atrocious. So unless you're going to get some savant in there, the next Ben Johnson, to be your OC, I don't know really what this brings to the team other than, okay, it's a defensive-minded guy who's a good leader. Well, you had that in Salah, and you decided to fire that. to me, this is more of a reflection on Woody Johnson and the family and their whole organization, and how they just want to give the Joneses a run for their money in ineptitude.
Agreed. And then unbelievably, they interviewed 16 separate people for the head coaching role alone. So names like Ron Rivera, Mike Ravel, Rex Ryan, goddamn, Matt Nagy, Mike Loxley, Steve Spagnuolo they interviewed. Spags was never taking that. Darren Rizzi, Jeff Ulbrich, Vance Joseph, Arthur Smith, Bobby Slowick, Brian Flores, Jeff Hafley, Josh McCowan, and Joe Witt Jr. There's some big names in all of that. And then they come out with Aaron Glenn. And I get that they've these franchises go back to this big story of like this guy, we picked this guy out of the draft and he played for us with success, and then he did this for us, he did that for us, he's coming home and he knows what the franchise is about, and this all that touchy-feely stuff but anybody can get that. And I agree with you, Brad. I think and a lot of the league were already saying they should have gone with a newer offensive mind and gone that way, because that's the way the league is going, and really pushed it in that direction, because it's hard to find offensive coordinators these days. You can't just pinch another team's offensive coordinator either. The league says you can't just have one go from one team straight to another on the same level, essentially, because they class all OCs as the same level. You can't do that. You can promote someone who is an offensive line coach or a QB coach, anything like that. You can promote them to an OC, but you can't take someone else's really good OC. So if someone's already got one out there, it's very hard to get them to come over unless they get fired, and they're only going to get fired if they're bad at their job. So really should have gone with the offensive one. There's a lot of guys on the table out there who are great defensive coordinators or would make great defensive coordinators. And to be honest, those guys are easier to keep these days.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. So again, it comes back to, okay, who are they going to hire? The word on the street is the Rams passing game coordinator, Nick Calais, I think is his name.
Yep.
Calais. He's the front runner. But the one I would not be surprised, again, this is a detriment to Detroit, but is Mark Brunell, their quarterback coach for Detroit. So, because Glenn would know him, Brunell was he was a stud quarterback for a brief period of time in the NFL. So with the Jaguars, I believe. I think it was the Jaguars or the Titans. And so I would not be surprised if he gets a promotion and comes over to the Jets as their OC.
Yeah, it's very likely to happen when you've got a guy going from one franchise to another.
Yeah.
As going to be a head coach, and you sort of pick the guys that you've been working with for the last couple of years and just sort of try and help them out in a way, but also how they play and where they go from here. So
yeah, and somebody's got to. Glenn's the one good thing I like about Glenn is he's the type of guy that will step in and say, "Hey, Aaron Rodgers, you're a shell of yourself. Time to hang it up, man." So
yeah,
I don't know if that's going to happen, but he wouldn't be afraid to do it.
All right, Brad, it's that time. We've put it off for long enough. The Dallas Cowboys promoted offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer, who is now their 10th head coach in franchise history. The team didn't have many formal interviews in its search to replace Mike McCarthy, who they ousted. They had interviews with Robert Saleh, Seahawks assistant head coach and former Viking head coach Leslie Frazier. Eagles OC Kellen Moore was amongst the other confirmed interviews. Of course, Jerry Jones spoke to Deion Sanders. We talked a little bit about that recently, but he denies that was even a formal interview, even though that is actually listed as one of the 6 interviews officially by the NFL. So that just screams of a Rooney Rule. And of course, he did have a bit of an informal chat with Pete Carroll. Brian Schottenheimer obviously has been the Cowboys' offensive coordinator for a number of seasons, and I don't know, Brad. It just the whole thing. Let's not focus not necessarily on Brian Schottenheimer for a moment, but on just Jerry Jones and a coaching search. The whole thing screams of Jerry and ineptitude the whole way. Just the whole way it went down. You know, if you really thought that this guy is so good and he's been your offensive coordinator for the last few years under Mike McCarthy, then why did we wait until the end of the season to fire Mike McCarthy?
You know, it's funny you use the word ineptitude because that's exactly what I was thinking. That's the exact word that I was going to lead with, and I can't put my finger on it. Why? The only thing I can think of is, you know, McCarthy finally had a gutful and said, you know, this is what I want, and Jerry was like, no. You know, Jerry's one of the richest owners in professional sports, but yet he is still a tight ass when it comes to paying his coaches. Yes, he paid Jason Garrett more than what he needed to as an OC in order to keep him around. But the reality is, he's just the guy. It's infuriating the way this whole thing has been handled, and it's no knock on Schottenheimer. Schottenheimer. I love Schottenheimer's dad, but that was his dad. And Schottenheimer has been in the league for 25 years, and he's never had a sniff at as being a head coach. Do I? You know, obviously, I hope and pray that he can make it work, but it screams absolute idiocracy. I can't get over it. Oh, I think I lost you.
Yeah, of course, Brad. As a Cowboys fan, you know, I can tell why you would be frustrated at that, and many Cowboys fans, I think, are very much. It's okay to feel like really, really angry with this entire situation because you're angry about the situation itself. Like, you know, Schottenheimer might be a good head coach. You don't know, and he could be, but then again, the likelihood of it is that he's not going to be.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, for the whole entire coaching staff was not under contract this year. At the end of this year, it's just stuff like that you just go, you are a complete tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's hear from that complete tool on why he is hiring Brian Schottenheimer. And yeah, you'll notice something from this clip as we go.
Now, I get my proverbial ass kicked over needing people in my comfort zone. Without this thing being about me in any way, if you don't think I can't operate out of my comfort zone, you're so wrong. It's unbelievable. This is as big a risk as you could take. As big a risk as you could take. No head coaching experience. Now, let me share something with you. With all of that, you've just heard him reference his osmosis, his family. Anybody in this room that doesn't believe the apple doesn't go far from the tree has missed it someplace down the road.
But no,
the only thing
it's not about Jerry. It's not about Jerry, though. It's Brad, okay? He said that. It's not about him. But that 43-second clip of why he's hiring Brian Schottenheimer, which was a very direct question from a reporter, why Brian over anyone else, was about Jerry.
It's a classic narcissist. He manages to turn anything and make it about him. It's just it's infuriating. It's absolutely disgusting, and it's embarrassing because he's incompetent. He's grossly incompetent. Somebody needs to have him do a test for early set on Alzheimer's because that guy is just he is out to lunch. I swear. Oh yeah, It's so infuriating. Have you heard his latest clip? When he's talking about, I don't know if it's his latest clip or not, but he's talking about a glory hole. Have you heard this?
I have, Brad. Funny you mentioned that, Brad.
I have not. I just caught like 5 seconds of it, and somebody said, and I said, "What? I'm sorry. did he make a comment about a glory hole? I was going to ask you about it."
Of course I've had that, Brad. Why would I not have that? Let me just find it for you there, Brad. I can.
I can't believe you have it. It's like only Jerry would come up with something so does he even know what that means? I mean, it really.
Possibly not, Brad. You don't know.
Yeah.
I think it means one thing to Jerry. It means one thing to everybody else in the.
To the rest, well, that I think that's the way Jerry's brain works. Is yeah, he just operates on a different level, but. That's not the kind of risk taker that I want Jerry taking. Oh, you got it?
Yeah, of course I've got it, Brad. Of course I've got it. I knew as soon as I heard it, I'm like, Bradley's going to love this. You ready?
There's a very low percentage of this that is smiles and glory holes.
Come on. Smiles and glory.
And that, Brad, is going to be the second drop that we are saving for the entirety of next year's season. That is going to be played every time we talk about your Cowboys. You can 100% guarantee that that is going into rotations with such greatness like Baker's Dangerous and Mr. Unlimited. Because holy shit, what a drop.
Seriously, has there ever been one of the richest guys in the world?
Smiles and glory holes. That's what Jerry thinks about. You know what? I was trying to find that clip, Brad, just for you. Okay, and I had to type in. Thank God, my search history is my search history anyway. But I had to type in Jerry Jones press conference glory hole just so I could find it. Okay. The thing I found though is that. Right back until 2011, Jerry has been referencing glory holes in press conferences.
No way.
He has this thing with referencing glory holes. And I don't know. I really want to know that if the other, like, if glory hole means something different to Jerry Jones than it means to the other 99.9% of us deviants in the world. I admit that there would be people in the world who would have no idea what that term means, but I just want to know what it means to Jerry, because it's sure if it means what it means to the rest of us to Jerry, and he is sticking that in press conferences, then I actually have a little bit more admiration for the man.
There has to be a Jerry Jones bingo card for his sayings. It's just that's wrong. That's wrong.
Maybe we can make one for next year.
Oh man.
Anyway, Brian Schottenheimer is the new head coach. It remains to be seen how that's going to pan out. We really do have to wait and see with that one. I don't like your chances as a Cowboys fan, Brad. There were some. I didn't pull out all the stats or the quotes, but I was listening to a podcast just today. The last 12 seasons that he's coached in some capacity as an offensive passing game or offensive coordinator. The number of times teams have had a positive yards per catch, yards, something around that, the yards total, a positive, is 2 in 12 seasons. And in 14 seasons, the number of times that he has had a team with the most rush yards in the league is 5. And of those 5, at least 3 were with the Jets at the beginning of his tenure as a coach. So I'm just like, he doesn't have the greatest stats in the world. Who knows who he's going to surround with him. At this point in time, it looks like Dallas are expected to hire former 49ers defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen as their special teams coordinator, which is a great hire.
Yep, I don't mind that at all.
And Matt Eberflus is coming back to Dallas as the defensive coordinator. He was formerly there as a linebackers coach, and he rejoins now as their defensive coordinator. That's actually been announced. I think that's a great hire. I think Matt Eberflus will be another one of those guys who is much better as a coordinator than he ever will be as a head coach, because he doesn't have all the big decisions to make. And again, just like we talked about with the Bears, having a head coach who knows the pitfalls of being a head coach and the ins and outs of the NFL, pair him with a first-time head coach, he can sort of guide him along the way. But I really like the Matt Eberflus hire too, especially for the Cowboys defense, Brad.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's a quality hire. Again, it goes back to, okay, here's a guy who didn't have success as the head coach. So yeah, this is exactly the kind of hire you want. That I feel like it's good. It's going to steady the ship. He knows the culture, which is what Jerry wants. Jerry wants people that are going to know the culture. It's interesting. The word on the street also is that Dak had some influence in the Schottenheimer thing. So
yeah, well, a lot of the guys, I think he knows obviously all of the offense, and a lot of the guys, heaps of them turned up to his press conference to support him. So they all really like him. There's probably going to be a bit better culture there than what might have been under Mike as well. Maybe Brian was the guy who was actually setting the culture in Dallas, and it wasn't Mike all along. And maybe that's where the friction came from.
It's possible. I think Mike did a lot of good things, but yeah, it's great. Like so far, everything's happening that you want to see. Players endorsing him, that type of thing. He did come across really well on the press conference, which it's a press conference, so what? But I don't think the stage is too big for him. It's just a matter of, can he lead the guys, and can he do all the little things that need to be done. Yeah,
exactly. The only head coaching job still left out there in limbo right now is, of course, the New Orleans Saints. They have interviewed quite a few guys for their position. Of course, their interim coach, Darren Rizzi. They requested an interview with Davis Webb, who's the Broncos QB coach. Giants OC, Mike Kafka. No idea why you would pick a Giants coordinator of any kind to interview for head coach. Of course, they did interview Aaron Glenn. We know Aaron Glenn is out from that now. Former Stanford coach and Broncos senior personnel exec David Shaw for that role. They interviewed Bills OC Joe Brady. He declined a second interview, so Joe Brady, it sounds like he's probably staying put in Buffalo. And the one guy that they have interviewed a second time and is still out there and is likely to be another first-time head coach for the season, which we won't actually know about until post-Super Bowl now, is Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore.
Yeah, I think Moore is the favorite on this. He just seems to his name keeps popping up over and over, and I think the Saints want to make a little bit of a splash. Something must have happened with McCarthy there. This is just my initial hunch is that Mike probably was told, look, we're leaning towards Kellen, and he pulled himself out rather than suffer the embarrassment. That's just my 2 cents, and that they're waiting for Kellen Moore to finish out and do his Super Bowl run. That's what I think is going to happen. I'm not exactly stoked on Kellen Moore. I was as an OC. But the shine has come off quite a bit, I think, with with his time in San Diego, and frankly, this season the Eagles have done it. They're winning. I just don't think it's the most imaginative playbook, and they're winning, I think, because they just have better dudes. They just have better studs, and he's not going to have that in New Orleans.
No, not at all. All right, let's quickly run through just some of the other coaching hires and things that have happened around the league. We'll run through them real quickly. We can say whatever you need to on any of these guys if you want to, Brad. Jeff Ulbrich is heading to Atlanta as the Falcons DC. He's the former Jets DC for the past 4 seasons, became their interim head coach, of course. Chuck Pagano is returning to the NFL and the Ravens. Baltimore's one-time defensive coordinator who went on to be the head coach of the Colts came out of retirement to join the Ravens as a senior secondary coach, Brad.
I love this hire.
I love it. I love Chuck.
I think it's great. I love the fact that there's no ego here, because a lot of guys would be like, "Oh, head coach down to a positional coach." No, he doesn't care. He just wants to get back into football. He probably realizes it's a great culture there. So no, I think it's a fantastic hire.
Well, from watching the McAfee show too, he's over a lot of his health concerns that he has had. Over the past years that he's been out of the league as well. So I think he is really chomping at the bit to get back into football.
Good for him.
And yeah, great for him. Bengals signed Notre Dame defensive coordinator Al Golden. Brad.
Yeah, I mean, it's always different to me when they poach guys from college ranks. I get it. I mean, it's not like he's only been in college, but he's been with Notre Dame for the last 3 years. So it's just always a little peculiar to me. And he was with the Bengals before as a linebackers coach, so he does have some background with them. But it's still this is kind of your typical Bengals hire. They're probably just doing it on the cheap.
Yeah, always on the cheap. But he could be good. Lou Anarumo, of course, was out. Lou was a very storied coach as well, though. So I don't know. He's got big shoes to fill. I would think. The Browns promoted Tommy Rees to offensive coordinator. I don't know. The Browns is the Browns. What's that really going to matter with the Browns? He was also a Notre Dame OC for 3 seasons as well, Brad, up until 2023. Okay. So more of the Fighting Irish in the league. Let's go. The Detroit Lions promoted linebackers coach Kelvin Shepherd to DC to replace Aaron Glenn. And they've already found their replacement for Ben Johnson, hiring Broncos pass game coordinator John Morton, which has been reported by NFL media. He had a previous stint with Detroit working on Dan Campbell's staff as a senior offensive assistant, and he joined Sean Payton, and he's now back in Detroit. Of course, talked about the Bengals and Lou Anarumo. The Colts are hiring Lou Anarumo as their defensive coordinator. So Lou isn't out of a job for very long at all.
I think this is a good hire in the sense that the by all intents and purposes, everything that I've heard about him is that he's a great coach. It's just he just didn't have the horses in Cincy. They had it the 1 year when everything clicked for him. They stayed healthy and got to the Super Bowl, but they needed a change, and he needs a change. So I do like this hire.
Yeah, same. So do I. I don't think Lou Anarumo, I share your belief there, Brad. I don't think he is a bad coach. I think he was just the subject of just a bad roster on defensive side. They were just terrible, and I don't know how the GM at the Bengals survives yet another year, because most of that is on him. The way that has... It's only the offense which are helping him at the moment, I would think. Let's keep scrolling down the document, and we will get to the San Francisco 49ers. Hired Jets special teams coordinator Brant Boyer to take over the special teams unit that has struggled for years with Kyle Shanahan. So hopefully a bit more stability there for some 49ers fans and special teams. They're promoting Clay Kubiak from offensive passing game specialist to offensive coordinator. The first time since 2021 with Mike McDaniel that Shanahan will have an offensive coordinator. Yes, I said Clay Kubiak.
Not Gary Kubiak. Not Clint Kubiak.
Not Clint. He is the brother of Clint. And as we discovered earlier when we were looking up to make sure that they were brothers, he also has another brother called Klein. So Gary had three boys, Clint, Clay, and Klein.
Oh, Gary, open up your imagination a little bit. That's like saying we're going to run off the guard. We're going to run off the tackle. We're going to run back off the guard. It's come on, man. Help yourself out.
And the 49ers are bringing back Robert Saleh as defensive coordinator. So he's
I do
back
like that.
in the
That's a good one.
back in San Francisco as DC. Yeah, that is a stellar hire. We've all seen now that Robert Saleh was definitely not the problem with the New York Jets. And that is now the San Francisco 49ers win, I would suspect. So that is a great hire there. He replaces Nick Sorensen, who was obviously fired as DC after one season. Speaking of Kubiaks, Clint Kubiak has been hired to be the Seattle Seahawks' next offensive coordinator. That makes Clint Kubiak a offensive coordinator for Seattle Seahawks, and Clay Kubiak an offensive passing game specialist or offensive coordinator for the 49ers. Same division, two brothers.
Yeah, it's not very often you see that happen in the same division. So it'd be kind of cool to see them both succeed, and you'd have the Harbaugh's light version.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well,
it's
Klein is a scout for the Dallas Cowboys, so maybe one of those other teams in the NFC West need to get Klein Kubiak on the books as well, just to sort of complete the trio.
that would be epic. I would love that. I would love to see that. I'm just glad Seattle got rid of their OC. That something needed to be done with that offense. So, Clint, make it happen.
Tennessee Titans fired general manager Rand Carthon after 2 seasons last week. He was definitely the problem. On your way out, Rand. Don't let that door hit you on our way out. Mike Boganzi has been hired there as the next GM. They announced that almost straight away, like they already had him lined up to be there. So he will be there with soon-to-be second-year Titans head coach Brian Callahan. So we'll see if that brings a little more stability to the Titans as they try and rebuild. And we've got some extensions as well, Brad. Minnesota Vikings extended Kevin O'Connell, the head coach, for many seasons, and quite a lengthy and wealthy extension. Apparently, has been reported.
Yeah, I think it's a great hire, or not hire, but a great extension. He deserves it. I think anybody, barring maybe 3, 4, 5 teams, would love to have him as their head coach. So hats off to Kevin.
Yeah, absolute no-brainer. That's what that one is. And that's about it for hires at the moment, Brad. There's we sort of got through them all. There are quite a lot of coordinator interviews and coordinators positions still available. So guys interviewing for a lot of those jobs, different places that have got new head coaches right now. So they're all sort of up and about and figuring out who's going where. Quite a few Vikings coaches, which doesn't make me happy at all as a Minnesota Vikings fan. But it is what it is. The guys succeed. They're going to get jobs elsewhere. You got to celebrate the guys as they move up in their lives, but it is what it is.
Yeah. One of the non-hires or non-movements I just wanted to mention that really surprised me was Cliff Kingsbury staying put. So I'm wondering if he didn't get offers or anything.
He originally said that he didn't want to take any interviews at all until their season was done.
Okay.
Was the report. He was saying that to a lot of people. So he basically put it out there as don't call me because I'm not going to pick up the phone. But from what I've sort of heard, that it was likely a don't call me because I don't want any. I'm in a good spot. But alluding to there's only one person I would have picked up the phone for. And, of course, that guy that amount of ineptitude doesn't pick up a phone to the one bloke who probably would have led your team to a great spot, Brad, because it has been put out there that the only team that Clint Kubiak would have probably had an interview with and likely signed on for had they offered it to him would have been the Cowboys.
Jeez. You mean Kingsbury?
Cliff Kingsbury. Sorry, with too many Kubiaks today.
Too many Ks. Oh gosh, I'm just trying to think that one through.
So Jerry didn't even entertain the thought. He didn't even wait till the Commanders were done.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Jerry doesn't wait for anything except for 2 brain cells to fire. So I'm glad Kingsbury stayed in the sense of I think Jaden Daniels is a once in a lifetime, not once in a lifetime, but he's a very good quarterback. And I think Dan Quinn is creating a culture there that's pretty unique. So Cliff knows that the grass is not always greener. He's been a head coach. He knows what it's like to flounder. He's obviously kind of reinvented himself a little bit. And he may end up being, it would not surprise me if he ends up being one of these guys that says, you know what? I just want to be an OC, and that's what I'm going to do.
What it wouldn't surprise me of, Brad, would be if the Brian Schottenheimer hire is just a 1 year hire a la Antonio Pierce, and Jerry is waiting for someone else that wasn't able to take a job this year because they were still under contract.
Yeah.
I'm of course alluding to Deion Sanders, who is still under contract with Colorado. So
yeah, for
this season coming. So that it's likely that's where it's going to end up, but is what it is. But yeah, I agree with Kingsbury. Dan Quinn is creating something special, and the talk had been basically Dan Quinn still has a really good relationship with Jerry Jones. They get on really well, and the talk had been that Dan Quinn was sort of saying to Cliff, "That's the job you want. That's a really good opportunity, and go there." But yeah, obviously Jerry don't wait for nobody.
Yeah.
So that's all the coaching hires, scuttlebutt, all the bits and pieces that have happened in the league in the last couple of weeks and where we're at. Of course, as we said, still waiting on the Saints to make a decision, but that will likely happen after the Super Bowl now because Kellen Moore has to coach a Super Bowl. So we'll likely hear about that post-Super Bowl probably in the week or two after, I would say. Whether or not that is going to happen, that's the only one left out there. And apart from that, a few coordinators and things, so we can update everybody on that as it happens later on in February. But apart from that, please join us later on this week for the recap of the championship round in the NFL, all of our best bets, our fantasy show, and our tipping comp, and of course, keep a very keen eye and look out for Manjot's Pastry Performer Awards on YouTube and, of course, on this podcast feed that you're listening to right now. You can catch everything to do with the Aussie Gridiron Network at linktree/Aussie Gridiron Network. All of the links there, merch store, all of our socials, the lot. And on behalf of myself and Brad, thank you very much for joining us, and we will talk to you later.
Glory hole.
The G'day Gridiron podcast is brought to you by the Aussie Gridiron Network, a network of Australian podcasts bringing the fun and a little bit of the Aussie larrikin to the NFL and fantasy football. Check out our other amazing productions. Australia's #1 fantasy football podcast, the Aussie NFL Fantasy Show. Everything about the local game at Aussie Gridiron Today. Manjot's Pastry Press on Instagram and YouTube, and Australia's very own Dynasty podcast, No Huddle Dynasty. Find links to everything at linktree/Aussie Gridiron Network.